how to play amazing solos using basic scales. This is how to connect the scales to the chords. Getting from playing rather simple chord note solos using a couple of chord notes to using scales and playing longer lines in the scales is a thing. Chord-scale relationships is one of the fundamentals in playing jazz, and you have to know this to play jazz. So connecting the scales to the chords is the way to develop your solos. In this tutorial, why is chord scale relationship so important? What is a chord scale relationship? Which scales fit where? Chopping up scales into bite-sized chunks. Chopping up more scales, bigger chunks. Less chopping. Show, play and analyze a short solo on Autumn Leaves using chopped up scales. Hi, I'm Søren and welcome to Søren Balgaard's saxophone lessons. Why is chord scale relationship so important? The chord scale relationship is very important because it shows which scales fits what chord. This is also how you know which scales fits the chords you are playing. Knowing the chords gives you insight into what functions the chords have. With this I mean dominant, subdominant and tonic functions. You also have a good knowledge of how the chords interact with each other, aka knowing the function of each separate note in the chord. What is chord scale relationship? Looking at a tune, there are three things: melody, harmony and rhythm. The melody dictates which harmony we add to the melody. The rhythm tells us how the tune is playing, in what style, what groove, danceable, not danceable and so on. Looking at the melody and the harmony, we find the key in which the tune is written. For example, in Autumn Leaves, this is written in A minor for the tenor saxophone. I can see this when I look at the final note of the melody and checking the chord of this note. On the last bar, there is an A on the A minor chord. This A. The tune is in A minor. In this way, we'll look at the song from the perspective of A minor, no sharps, no flats. When we analyze the tune, we'll begin thinking in the key of A minor and see what surprises comes along the way. Which scales fits where? We have just established that Autumn Leaves is in the key of A minor. This means we'll look at the chord from the A minor and also choose the scales from A minor and as close as we get. Looking at the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves. Running a quick analysis of the tune, we'll see that all of the chords are in C major or A minor, the parallel minor. We'll get into the theory in another video. This is not the video for this, but we have A minor and C major. Those are parallel to each other, except one chord. That's the E7. So we start with the D minor 7, G7, C, and that's of course in C. Then we go to the F major, that's the 4th step, the B half diminished 7, that's the 7th of C major, but here we are going towards the A minor, is also the 2 of the A minor, so we have the B half diminished is the 2nd degree of A minor, then we have the E7 which is the dominant for A minor, and then we have the A minor chord which is also our ending chord, so we have the key of A minor. In the melody, on the E7, we have the notes F sharp and G sharp. In the solo, we would only add the G sharp, so we get an E7 flat 9. This is more minor-like, so more in the style of A minor, not adding the F sharp, but only adding the G sharp. Theoretical story, we'll get that in another video. We now also know what scales we need to play everything as close to the C major or the A minor, so close as possible. Adding the G sharp on the E7, we get the E7 flat 9. The scales we are going to play on this tune looks like this and sounds like this. 1. Playing all the scales without timing because I'm playing like 9 notes in the bar, so it doesn't fit the 8 notes. Then we have to go to 16 notes. Long story, but this is just the material we're going to work on. So the scale notes we're going to work with. Make sure you're practicing all your scales very thoroughly through all tunes you are playing. To get a really great start with this, check my video 4 scale exercise you must know. Find it on my YouTube channel. You'll get a lot of info on how to really practice your scales. Chopping up scales into bite-sized chunks. The method is to fit the pattern of the chord over the scales. This is a pretty easy thing to do. Just divide the scales into third steps from the root on. You can see it, I did it here in this example. So basically I just striped under the chord notes, but you see in between the chord notes I have scales, so I'm getting this kind of pattern. I'll emphasize the chord notes when I'm playing this. I play the chord notes a little bit louder. The next step is to play very slow solos between the chord notes. Start with the solo between thirds. For this, I choose one step of the chord, for example between the root and the third, and take this through the form of the tune. I start hitting the target notes, and this is very, very important to get these target notes, so the chord notes, into your playing, and then play a slow melodic line. What I do is improvising with very small parts of this scale between the root and the third of each chord, making sure that I focus my energy on the chord notes. So not hanging too much on that second note, but the root and the third, making sure I know this. So getting these target notes into my system. Start playing a couple of rounds of rubato. Learn the sound of the notes very, very well. Rubato playing. Then advance to play with the metronome or a play along. I'll just take the play along which I have from the YouTube and start playing the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves using this system. Just take it really, really easy. You don't have to play all the notes. Take it easy. Play a lot of rounds of this, and I can only emphasize play a lot of rounds. So just get to know these 3 notes. You're not in a hurry. When you have done this and you really know the scale and the chord tones you need to hit, we can expand this to go to other thirds of this tune. For this, take the next interval and use the same system. So now I'm basically taking the next interval of the chord, so from the 3rd to the 5th, exactly doing the same thing, getting this part of the scale into my head and my fingers. First, start rubato and playing really, really slow through the tune. You can basically just keep doing this, play this for 5 minutes. Just go through this, round these 8 bars and play along with the third to the fifth note. Go each bar and play very strict. When you add music or add a beat to it, it gets so much easier if you're just taking 100 rounds on this. So add a tempo. Do this to all third intervals in the scale. Here you can see all the intervals you need to practice. Get really good in this, taking these intervals and taking them through the tune before you go on. Just take it easy, play it lots of times. The last step in playing only with thirds steps in the scale is to mix third steps around, like in this example. I improvise and you can see that the schematics, what thirds I use. I try my best to get into this sound so melodical as possible. And as in the other examples, I really start rubato. I just start with no timing, just going through the third intervals I just practiced. Repeat. Keep going on this as many times as you can. Playing this in time would sound like this. Just take the play along. When you have played the rubato stuff lots of times, take it through with the beat, with the timing. Chopping up more scales, bigger chunks. Advancing to using bigger parts of the scales is of course the way to go when you want to add more scales to your solos. Dividing the scales into fifth intervals looks like this. So basically the scale you're playing is still divided into the chords, so in thirds, so the D minor is the D, the F, the A, the C, the E. We add the scale in between, still have the same material, but now we have 5 notes in our scale chunks. On the G7, on the C major, on the F major, on the B half diminished, on the E7 flat 9, A minor, and of course there are definitely overlapping intervals, but the system is pretty clear. Use the same progression as before. Just take 5 notes, play them from the root to the fifth now. That's our first group of notes. We're taking root to the fifth. Let's do this with rubato. Just play it really slowly. Get from the root to the fifth. Take it through a couple of times. You already know pretty much all the intervals because you already played the thirds. Taking from the root to the fifth is not a problem. So taking it slow, playing it rubato. target notes really clear, remember to hit those target notes. You see them marked in red. When you're familiar with the notes, you go on to play this in time. A good way to familiarize yourself with the scales and material is just to play the scale part up and down till you have it in your fingers. Going on, play this in time. You also need to play the other intervals. So check the intervals here in this schematics, where you can see you're playing from the root to the fifth, what I mentioned just before, from the third to the seventh. Take this interval exactly as with the thirds. Take this interval through the form, playing rubato, and then when you know it really well, putting in a time, and again from the fifth to the ninth, take this interval with the scale, put it through the form, rubato, and then in time. Less chopping. Going on to the bigger intervals, like the 7 notes of the 9 note scales, would be a logic step. What we'll see is that you get a bar full of 8 notes. We'll just get the scales going up and down if you put this into this system. So the trick is to train this a lot, so the thirds and the fifth, because you get a flexibility to go up and down. You can easily add the full scales when you know this system. Repeat the steps above till you know everything and all the intervals. To really get you going on this, I've made a second manual in the series Beginning Jazz Improvisation. Jazz Improvisation, Step 2, from chords to scales. The manual is packed with chord progressions of the 2 famous tunes where the chord scale connections are fitted. The manual will really help you get through the how to fit the scales to the chords and improvise in an easy and stepwise way. Working with example chord progressions such as Autumn Leaves and Blue Bossa, taking you through all the possible steps and going through how you can make this into melodic playing. Making sure you come out being able to improvise with your scales. That's the most important thing. Using these scales over the chords. Adding the full layout of all steps in the process and adding how to apply this on a guide tone line, so you get an even more melodic soloing play. Instead of playing the intervals here and there, you can actually play them like this. Go take a look at the manual. You can take a look at the link below in the description. Show, play and analyze a short solo on Autumn Leaves using chopped up scales. 1, 2, 3. The fifth of D minor between the D and the A, playing third to the fifth, adding the ninth, going down from the third to the root. The third of G7 between the third and the fifth, playing from the third up to the fifth and back again. Playing 2/3 interval on the C major 7 from the fifth to the seventh and from the third to the fifth. Up the scale from the fifth to the seventh, up the scale from the third to the fifth, jumping down to the third again. Fifth to the root, going over the bar line, playing down the fifth to the root of the F major 7. On the B half diminished, playing over a fifth interval from the seventh to the third, up the scale from the fifth to the seventh, jumping down to the fifth, and up the scale between the third and the fifth, jumping down to the third. Playing a fifth from the seventh to the third of the E7 flat 9, from the fifth to the seventh, up, jumping back to the fifth, repeating the pattern from the third to the fifth. The bar 5 and bar 6 are one pattern repeated through the bars. Using 2/3 with extra notes on the A minor 9, from the third to the fifth, up, adding the seventh, playing down from the ninth to the seventh, adding the fifth again. Playing a third interval from the ninth down to the seventh. Get to know your chords and scales. This is some of the best technique you can have, basic chord and scales. Check these 2 videos, get your technique up to level, usable technique on your chords and your scales. apply this right now, you'll get an enormous advantage just doing these 2 tricks in these videos. Questions are welcome. Just ask and I will get back to you. Add questions in the comments, please. Thank you. All likes and shares, of course, welcome. If you like my tutorials, please like them. All links mentioned in this video are available in the description. Play music, have fun.